My stepmother tricked my dad into missing my wedding by faking a crisis with her daughter. Now, she's upset because she's banned from my house. For perspective, my biological mother is not in the picture and has never wanted to be, aside from giving birth to me. I cannot recall anything Mom has done for me. When I was younger, it hurt a lot because I believed I had done something wrong to have her hate me and leave. Now I know better. My father married my stepmother when I was 8 years old. Now that I'm an adult, I understand why Dad remarried, even if I wish he hadn't. My stepmother pretended to have a soft place for me while dating my father. It was her way of winning him over, but I was never deceived. I could tell from the way she handled me when he wasn't present. I attempted to tell my father, but he assumed I simply didn't like her since she wasn't my mother. He said having a mother figure in my life was beneficial and that I should learn to accept her. I realized he needed companionship, perhaps more than I needed a mother, so I chose to endure my stepmother. She wasn't completely nasty to me, but she didn't care as much as she wanted my father to believe she did. She always did the bare minimum rather than going above and beyond. I didn't expect her to because I wasn't her biological child, but it still hurt. Claudia, my stepmother, had never married nor had children before meeting my father. My father and Claudia tried to have children for years before ultimately having one. My sister is 6 years old today, and she is really gorgeous. I adore her and would do anything for her. As you can tell, I am much older than she is. On the wedding day, my father was meant to attend my wedding, but he was unable to do so due to my stepmother. When I got to the location, I was surprised to find neither of my parents present. I called my father, and he informed me that Tessa, my younger sister, was missing, and he and Claudia were looking for her. I was afraid. This couldn't happen on my wedding day. I honestly wanted to cancel the whole affair, but my father reminded me that we had guests who had taken time off work and flown to attend. He told me I couldn't disappoint them and made me pledge to wait an hour. If he wasn't returned by then, I should go on with the wedding. When the hour was up, they still hadn't found Tessa, so I had no choice but to proceed with the ceremony. I was devastated. In addition to my husband, my father is the most significant person in my life. He was supposed to lead me down the aisle, but he wasn't even present. I was heartbroken, but also felt terrible for being upset because my sister was absent. A few minutes after we exchanged vows and were about to begin the reception, my father called to say they were on their way. When they came, I discovered that Tessa had gone home with a friend. The school accepted it because her best friend's mother was also authorized to pick her up if her own mother was unable. Claudia pretended she didn't know and apologized excessively for everything. I didn't believe her since something didn't make sense. After everything had calmed down, I questioned Tessa why she went home with her closest friend when her mother had not instructed her to. Tessa responded, "Mommy told me to go with Ryan, but not tell anyone." Claudia had purposefully caused my father to miss my wedding, blaming it on Tessa's disappearance. By this point, the reception was almost done, and my husband and I were about to leave. My father continued apologizing for missing the wedding, but I told him he shouldn't blame himself, but rather the lady he married. He stated that was a serious accusation. I told him that wasn't an accusation if it was true, and I asked Tessa to repeat what she had previously told me. She did it so that everyone could hear. I could see the wrath on my father's face as he struggled to suppress it. He asked Claudia if what Tessa had stated was true. She didn't answer right away, so he had to shake her out of her thoughts by shouting. What she said next startled me. Claudia admitted that she thought my father only cared about me, gave me everything I needed, and frequently neglected her and Tessa. She admitted that she wanted the first wedding when my father walked a bride down the aisle to be Tessa's, not mine. She considered Tessa to be her first and only daughter. She said that I had always had all of the attention in my life, and it was time for Tessa to get some too. Claudia expressed jealousy that my father would escort me down the aisle. Tessa is just 6 years old, for crying out loud, and Claudia was prepared to wait 20 years for that time. Instead, she destroyed my wedding to draw attention away from me. Claudia was the closest thing to a mother I'd ever had, and all she had to do was accept me as her daughter and enjoy her time as the mother of the bride. My biological mother was not invited to the wedding, so it wasn't like two mothers were fighting for me. My wedding was not the moment for her to be insecure about her and Tessa's status in the family. Nothing she said made sense to me. It's tragic that it took so long for my father to recognize who she really is. What has already been done is irreversible. It will always be true that my father missed my wedding for no legitimate reason, and it hurts tremendously. Claudia expressed no remorse. She expressed everything as if it were true. expecting everyone to comprehend and agree with her. She has always been this way, unable to admit her mistakes and unable to apologize. This time, though, she had gone too far. She toyed with our lives in an unpleasant manner. My father was terribly disappointed, but he didn't want to make matters worse on my wedding day, so he excused everyone, stating that we would discuss it later. We did not travel for our honeymoon right away since we had arranged a Thanksgiving ceremony the day after the wedding. Claudia acted as if nothing had happened the day before. During the service, she urgently tried to be polite to me, overcompensating with praises and excessive attempts to ensure everything was in order, despite the fact that everything had been arranged months in advance. Honestly, all I needed from her was a real apology, but it didn't appear that I was going to get it. That explains why she was doing so much, so that we could move on. She needed to understand that there is no moving forward without a genuine apology. Even though it won't reverse what happened, she must accept she was wrong and truly apologize to me, my father, and my husband before we can move on. My spouse has always believed my family was chaotic, and this further supports his opinion. His family dynamics are quite different from mine, quiet, prim, and proper, whereas mine feels far more ghetto in comparison. We intended to have lunch at the church where the Thanksgiving service would be held, which was close to our new home. I was on the edge of canceling because I didn't want to deal with my stepmother any longer, but being with my husband has taught me to see the broader picture and not behave rashly. Despite my reservations about canceling, I realized it would be more detrimental than beneficial. She did everything during lunch to persuade me to talk to her, but I refused. This was not something that could be overlooked, and no one would just move on. The tension in the air was evident, and I'm sure everyone expected me to lash out at her. Then, during lunch, she made a statement that referred to me as her daughter. That was the breaking point for me. I informed her that she had no right to call me her daughter. There was no point in pretending she cared about me or wanted the best for me, because her behaviors demonstrated otherwise. I made it obvious that I did not want her or anything associated with her near me, especially Tessa. I was tired of tolerating her only to make my father happy. I asked her to leave and warned her not to return to my place. Lunch had ended, and it was time for everyone to leave. Some of my pals stayed behind to cheer me up and assist me with packing for my honeymoon. Months later, it's been months since my wedding, and things have not improved. I haven't seen or spoken with my stepmother since that Thanksgiving feast. I've excused myself from every function that might bring us together. My father tried to talk me into reconciling with her, but I refused. I do not want her in my life. My father once asked me a striking question. Was I willing to end my relationship with Tessa? I didn't react since I was too annoyed to consider Tessa at the time. However, I now feel terrible about putting her in the center of all this. She did nothing wrong, but I punished her. My father informed me that Tessa misses me a lot. He mentioned that she'd cried and asked for me multiple times, which crushed my heart. Still, I wasn't ready to let go of what had happened, so I did nothing. Am I doing to Tessa what my real mother did to me? I know it isn't precisely the same, but I can't stop feeling guilty. NTA, I believe you simply need time to process your emotions before returning to Tessa's life. I can't imagine how you feel knowing your father missed your wedding. NTA, your father could have done more than just shout at her to obtain the facts. It did not appear that he took command of the situation. He must guarantee that his wife makes amends, even if it means using force. My fiancée and I have been together for several years. She met my daughter, Kylie, who is 15, and they seem to get along well. However, I am not comfortable with her parenting my daughter. I do not want her to dictate or try to parent her. Many people may not like that, but it's what Kylie and I are comfortable with, and we talked about it before I got engaged or allowed my fiancé to move in. This was not sprung on my fiancée either. She was told this long before we began dating, got engaged, or moved in together. It was never new knowledge. I told her that I understood if she didn't like it, but it was a barrier I was establishing for my daughter and myself. She appeared to understand at the time. If you want more context, seek up Nacho Parenting. I've never had a problem with someone not enjoying this setup. My concern is that she suddenly has a problem with it, despite knowing about it earlier. After she moved in a few months ago, she began taking Kylie to school. I never expected or planned for her to do that. Yet she awoke an hour early to drive my kid to school. Things got heated when she went to Kylie and informed her she couldn't go out because she had homework to do. This sparked an argument because Kylie was attempting to explain, but my fiancé kept cutting her off, saying, "No, you can't go out." When I went in, I clarified that Kylie wasn't going to a hangout, but to the library to study for a group test her teacher had planned. My fiancé was surprised and remarked, "Well, she doesn't need to be going out like that anyway. She won't focus in a group." I informed her that it was not her decision to make. I drove Kylie to the library and returned to find my fiancé seething. She accused me of embarrassing her and claimed Kylie wasn't even studying. I informed her again that she had no right to influence what my daughter did. If she had real issues, she should have contacted me, but she had no business arguing with my child in that manner. She replied, "Oh, so I can send her off, pick her up from school, and deal with all of the inconveniences, but I can't discipline her?" I told her no, she couldn't, and reminded her that this wasn't about parenting. The problem was that she had willfully crossed a barrier that had been explicitly communicated from the beginning. I told her she went out of her way to cross that limit and then tried to defend it. That was her decision. She departed, claiming she was too angry to converse at the time. Now I feel as if I'm being set up. She was aware of this boundary and is treating it as something she can wear down over time. NTA, you set a clear and firm limit, and she continually violated it, then became angry at you for holding her responsible. If your fiancé is unable to accept this, you may need to reassess your relationship. These are huge red flags. She ignores your and Kylie's very fair boundaries and then gives you the silent treatment when questioned. She also tried to shift the responsibility onto you, claiming you embarrassed her. NTA, but I believe you should really rethink your relationship with your fiancé. It appears she believed that as you became closer as a family, she would be able to make judgments about Kylie's parenting. However, her behavior throughout this circumstance appears to be controlling. The drinking age here is 18. I work at a club with crazy hours, so one Saturday morning after work, some of my coworkers and I decided to have a few beers in my house. There were 4 of us, ages 32, 27, 25, and 19. Working in a club, we're used to seeing people become trashed, so we realized the value of recognizing our boundaries. Nobody was compelled to drink. We'd all worked 10 hours on our feet, so there were only 4 women sitting around a coffee table with whiskey, tequila, gin, and mixers. Jenny, 19, continued to pour shots as the rest of us sipped our drinks gently. We all agreed to pace ourselves and take Ubers home once we were inebriated. Then the drama began. Jenny began sobbing, first from delight, then loneliness, and last from alcohol. She spam called her ex constantly, lost her phone, and then asked that I find it so she could call her ex to pick her up. Spoiler alert, he never arrived. Jenny refused to go home, even if one of us accompanied her, so I tucked her into my bed and told her to rest. She then asked me to cuddle her, and as I did, she began grinding on me. I instantly excused myself. Later, she exited the bedroom, returned to the couch, and began contacting her ex until losing her phone in the blankets. Then she vomited on the couch. When I went to check my room, I discovered that she had also vomited on my bed, which had spread and saturated for about an hour. Yum. Jenny handled everything with a glassy-eyed dismissiveness that some colleagues sought to justify because of her age. Every blanket in my flat came into contact with vomit. When she finally woke up over 6 hours later, I persuaded her to agree to leave. She ignored the mess she had made. I snapped and asked her who she thought would clean up all the puke and where she expected me to sleep. She reluctantly promised to clean my bed and bedding, but she has been putting it off ever since. The bed was cleaned 2 days later, and she didn't mind that I had to remain at my partner's house in the interim. She hasn't returned the bedding she promised to dry clean, and she gets offended when I ask for updates without being overly pleasant. She blamed her behavior on drinking, and some colleagues think she's just young and going through things. They say I'm being too harsh, but this smacks of entitlement. I've been a drunk girl before, but I've always apologized for my faults. Jenny, on the other hand, seemed to believe that my life will continue as usual, even without a bed or blankets. I am a broke student working in the service business, so none of this is simple for me. Am I being inconsiderate? NTA, don't take drunks home anymore. If she had puked once, she should have been in the restroom. Unfortunately, you may have to accept the loss and clean everything yourself next time. I've been in your situation. I cleaned up after a friend and then informed her she wasn't allowed at my house again since she was intoxicated. I even put her in the bathtub to sleep it off with a bucket nearby. Thank God for waterproof mattress covers. You were not inconsiderate. You allowed an intoxicated person to stay at your house, throw up everywhere, and did not ask her to leave until she was sober. You're correct. She should go out of her way to make it up to you. Sure, she's young and had a rough drinking night. You don't want to punish her. You simply want to be made whole for her actions. Here's what you should do. Politely but firmly ask her to return your stuff or pay for replacements. Say anything like this. Jenny, I need my sheets and stuff returned before tomorrow. If you can't do that, I'll need the money to replace them. You spewed up on every blanket and sleeping surface I own, and I need them cleaned or replaced. Please send me specified amount or the cleaned things at the end of the week. Explain to your coworkers that you are not being harsh or carrying a grudge. You just cannot afford to cover the cost of ruined products. Even children realize that their acts have repercussions. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.